Hey, President Reed, whenever you're ready.
The board will now come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Middlebrook.
Present.
Alderman Bosley. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingrassia.
Present.
Alderman Coder. Alderwoman Rice.
Present.
Alderman Gunther.
Here.
Alderman Vollmer.
Present.
Alderwoman Martin.
Present.
Alderwoman Murphy.
Present.
Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Oldenburg.
Present.
Alderman Rhodey.
Present.
Alderman Todd.
Present.
Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Boyd.
Present.
Alderman Vaccaro.
Present.
Alderman Narayan.
Here.
Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Clark
Present.
Hubbard. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Here.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Present.
Alderwoman Navarro.
Present.
President Reed.
Here.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Coder. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green.
Present.
Alderwoman Davis.
Present.
Alderwoman Spencer.
Present.
Alderman Muhammad. 22 present.
A quorum being present, we will be led today in prayer by none other than John Watson Jr. We are so honored to have John back with us today. He often shows up at the board meeting and he is our official clergy. So, John.
God bless each and every one of you. We have not ceased praying for you, nor the city. Those that will join us in prayer, we ask you to bow your head. Gracious God, Heavenly Father, first we're thankful for the progress we have made as a nation. As we are focusing on the Juneteenth celebration all over the nation, it's clear that while progress has been made in Black America, 150 years out of bondage, considerable barriers continue to impede that progress. As we move our nation toward a more perfect union where freedom is experienced by all, we pray where hearts are fearful and constricted, grant courage and hope. Where anxiety is infectious and widely, grant peace and reassurance. Where impossibilities close every door and window, grant imagination and resistance. Where distrust twists our thinking, grant healing and illumination. Where spirits are daunted and weakened, grant soaring wings and strengthen dreams. Into your arms we commit ourselves, our family, our city, our nation. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend. Some round of applause and thank you for attending. There we go. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
All right, for some reason, my screen dropped. All right, we are also blessed to have just a exceptional clerk of the Board of Aldermen, who's also an educator in African-American history. And we are blessed that he is able to do his traditional Juneteenth speech this morning to tell us a little bit about the history of Juneteenth. Clerk.
Yes, Mr. President. In April of 1865, actually April 12th, General Lee surrendered to Grant in Virginia. This marked the ending of the Civil War. According to people like abolitionists Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass, when people held in bondage heard of their freedom, they said spontaneous celebrations broke out. In Mississippi, they said people would get together and those who had been held in bondage would buy a new rope and they would cut that rope into pieces to indicate the ending of their bondage, and they would carry that with them to remember that they were now free. In other places, they said they would just walk off the plantation or the property to ensure that they can do whatever they wanted. In some places, they would dress up and parade down the street happily, pointing out the fact that they are now free. Lots of different kinds of celebrations broke out. This was in April. In May, there in Charleston, South Carolina, they collected they said there was bodies everywhere, and the people held in bondage and others in the community went and buried those who had been killed. And then on May 1st, they did a great celebration where they paraded down the street and put flowers on the graves, thus starting Decoration Day, which later became Memorial Day here in the United States. Most are not aware that it started with freed Africans in Charleston, South Carolina. Still further, Frederick Douglass said that people would change their names as these celebrations would go about because they no longer wanted to be known by the names of slavery. So people would give themselves names, new names. They call themselves Mr. This or Miss That or T.L. Johnson. And they would say that the letters stood for nothing, but they were entitled to call themselves whatever they wanted to. So they gave themselves some initials, T.L., D.K., whatever it was in their heart, they did it. This ending of slavery in America changed the fabric of the country. St. Louis held one of the largest abolitionist organizations in the history of the United States called the Knights of Liberty. Some 47,000 members across the country founded right here in St. Louis in 1846 at then what was called 7th and Green Street, which later became Locust. Those of y'all who can remember the old Sticks, Bear, and Fuller, this is in the back of where that building was. I'm dating myself. But this organization was one of the largest abolitionist organizations in the country, started by a man and his wife named Moses Dixon, and they called his wife Mother Dixon. They were also involved in founding Lincoln University and pushing for free public education for African-American children in the city of St. Louis. After the ending of the Civil War, lots of spontaneous celebrations broke out. The most famous, they said, happened in Texas, where the people in Texas heard of the news on June 19th. And there, because of the size of the plantations, and besides the size of slavery in Texas, so many celebrations broke out and such grand scale that the entire celebration had become known as Juneteenth. Initially, many of them just called it Freedom Days. And the first major Freedom Day celebration in St. Louis took place in 1868, right at they called the Philanthropic Hall at Washington and now about 4th Street. And there they had a great exposition that day where they had singing and games, and they raised money to build schools for African-American children, all in celebration of the fact that those held in bondage were now free. That freedom is something that all in America can celebrate. It changed the fabric of America. It took a change in mentality for it to happen. And the accomplishment of ending slavery is an accomplishment for the entire country. All can celebrate Juneteenth. It is Frederick Douglass that says, anytime a person puts a chain on another, the other side of that chain is on that person. And so then slavery was a suffrage of everyone. It deprived people not only the right of freedom, but the right to think free, including those that held those in slavery. And so, Mr. President, members of this board, out of that jubilation, Juneteenth emerged as a celebration all the way until 2020, where various organizations have sponsored activities throughout the decades, honoring and observing the freedom and the ending of slavery, of chattel slavery in the United States. It is a celebration we all can celebrate and enjoy. Thank you, Mr. President.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Clerk. Let's give our clerk, please unmute all the mics, and let's give our clerk a big round of applause. And thank you. That was. And moving forward, before we begin the rest of the meeting, I'm going to ask a personal favor from all the members of the board. We've all known our clerk, Terry Kennedy, for numerous years, and some of us have known him and knew of him before even coming into elected office. He served well for I don't know how many years. The clerk will have to tell me, but a lot of years as the alderman of the 18th Ward and as a leader in all sorts of movements to advance the rights and the issues that African Americans face on a daily basis. So I'm asking my personal favor and my personal request to all the members of the Board of Aldermen moving forward, even though we know Terry Kennedy, right? And we knew him as Alderman Kennedy, but moving forward, please address him as Mr. Clerk moving forward. Please refrain from addressing him by his first name, Terry. Let's show him that respect and address him as Mr. Clerk. I think he would appreciate that moving forward, especially given all that he's done for the city and for just general good of all people across this city over all the years. So Mr. Clerk, thank you for such a great presentation. Introduction of honored guests. Any introduction of honored guests? Alderman from the 23rd.
Yeah, as always, my friend Greg Meyer, I'd like to have as our special guest. He's always tuning in and checking with me after and giving me advice.
Welcome, Greg. Any further introductions? Any further introductions? Alderman from the 25th.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I would like to have as my honored guests, one, my boyfriend, Darren, is working from home today. So he'll be listening into the meeting as we deliberate our discussions today. Anyway, I would also like to have my neighbor, Nate Lindsay, who's tuning in from his office as well as my honored guest this morning. Thank you.
Welcome, Darren and
Nate.
Give them a round of applause. Welcome. Any further introductions? Alderman from 10th, like to wrap us up.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. As we go into Father's Day weekend, naturally, the day today is Juneteenth, so we should all celebrate Juneteenth. And if you're celebrating Juneteenth, it's also National Martini Day, so you can combine the two. Thank you very much.
All right. Approval of the minutes.
Approval of the minutes for June 12th, 2020.
Alderman from the 22nd, you recognize on approval of the minutes.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move for approval of the minutes dated June 12th, 2020.
Moved by the Alderman from the 22nd, entertain a second on that. Second by the Alderman from the 23rd. 13th, Alderman from 13th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries. Report of city officials.
Report of city officials can be found in A, B, and C of the agenda and has been placed in the alderman's mailboxes.
We dispense with line item 7. Would anyone like to move any bills off of any of our informal calendars? think we should have at least 2. Would anyone like to move any bills off of any of our informal calendars? Alderman Boyd?
No, thank you.
All right, so we will dispense with line items 8 through 10. First reading of board bills.
Board Bill 71, sponsored by President Reed. An ordinance submitting to the qualified voters of the city of St. Louis a proposal to add 1 new article, Article 27 of the City of St. Louis Charter, which authorizes and directs the mayor to enter into a long-term lease for the operation and management of the St. Louis Lambert International Airport, provided that total proceeds, including the payment of air debit debt, or at least $1.7 billion, and creates trust funds to direct the net proceeds of at least $1.1 billion to be used for public safety, neighborhood development, job and vocational training, streets, bridges, parks, clean and livable neighborhoods, and city infrastructure, and providing for an election to be held for voting on the proposed revision and the manner of voting thereat, and for the publication, certification, deposit, and recording of this ordinance, and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 72, sponsored by Alderman Bosley, an ordinance directing the Director of the Health and Hospitals to establish a minority de-escalation unit that shall, when requested, undertake to de-escalate confrontations between City of St. Louis Division of Police officers and alleged suspects and others involved in the situation. Board Bill 73, sponsored by Alderwoman Boyd, an ordinance to amend Section 2 and 3 of Ordinance 60561, approved October 11, 2000, and codified in Chapter 8108A of the Revised Code of the City of St. Louis, pertaining to vendors to prohibit persons from offering or permitting the offering for free any goods, wares, merchandise, flowers, horticulture products, service, food or beverage, regardless of value, or any coupon, certificate, ticket, voucher, or rebate, otherwise regardless of value, as an inducement to purchase other goods or services to draw customers to a store, business, websites, or other online platform in order to stimulate sales of goods or services except in those areas designated as vending district, and amending the definition of the term vend or vending and defining the term coupon as such term used herein. Board Bill 74, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingrassia, an ordinance approving the First Amendment to a soccer stadium redevelopment plan and the First Amendment to Master Redevelopment Agreement, and authorized and directing the taking of other actions and approval of execution of other documents or as necessary or desirable to carry out and comply with the intent hereof. Board Bill 75, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance submitting to the qualified voters of the City of St. Louis a non-binding preferential vote as authorized by Article 2, Section 9 of the city's charter to vote on the question as to whether the city should close the Division of Corrections medium security institution in order to assist the Board of Aldermen, Mayor, and Comptroller in their management and direction of the Division of Corrections medium security institution. Board Bill 76, sponsored by Alderman Vollmer, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 2732 59th Street area. Board Bill 77, sponsored by Alderman Muhammad and Alderman Vaquero, an ordinance submitting to the qualified voters of the City of St. Louis a proposed amendment to the charter of the City of St. Louis to maintain the Board of Aldermen as body of 28 aldermen representing 28 wards and preventing its reduction beginning December 31st, 2021 to a body of 14 aldermen representing 14 wards as called for under Article 1, Section 3 of the City of St. Louis Charter, providing for an election to be held for voting on the proposed amendment and the manner for the voting and for the publication, certification, deposit, and recording of this ordinance, and containing an emergency clause. That is the extent of first reading of board bills.
Reference to committee.
To the Ways and Means Committee, Board Bill 71, to Public Safety, Board Bill 72 and 75, to the Streets Committee, Board Bill 73, To HUD, Board Bill 74, to Neighborhood Development, Board Bill 76, and to Legislation Committee, Board Bill 77. That is the extent of reference to committee.
Second reading.
The following board bill was reported out of the Special Committee COVID-19. Board Bill 49 as amended, sponsored by Alderman Vollmer and Alderwoman Davis. An ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, wherein the Board of Aldermen authorizes the receipt of and appropriates funds under the CARES Act, the Federal Emergency Management Act Grant Program, the Bureau of Justice Assistant Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Funding Program, the Community Development Block Grant Program, the Emergency Solutions Grant Program, and the Housing Opportunities for People with AIDS and Ryan White Grant Programs, all relating to the COVID-19 pandemic and containing an emergency fund. The following board bills were reported out of Ways and Means with a due pass recommendation. Board Bill 1 as amended, sponsored by President Reed and Alderman Vollmer, City's annual budget appropriation for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2020 and ending June 30th, 2021, amounting in the aggregate to the sum of $1,116,375,497, which sum is hereby appropriated from revenue and special funds named for the purposes hereinafter enumerated and contained in the emergency clause. Board Bill 53 as amended, sponsored by Alderwoman Navarro and Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, an ordinance approving the petition of an owner of certain real property to establish the Community Improvement District, establishing the Forest Park TOD Community Improvement District, finding a public purpose for the establishment of the Forest Park TOD Community Improvement District, and containing an emergency and a severability clause. Board Bill 55, sponsored by Alderman Rhodey, an ordinance approving the petition to establish the Iron Hill Community Improvement District, establishing the Iron Hill Community Improvement District as a political subdivision of the state of Missouri, confirming the prior determination that real estate within the Iron Hill Community Improvement District is a blighted area, finding a public purpose for the establishment of the Iron Hill Community Improvement District, approving appointment of the initial board of directors, containing an emergency clause and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 57, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingrassia, an ordinance approving the petition for the creation of the Soccer Stadium Community Improvement District, establishing the Soccer Stadium Community Improvement District as a political subdivision of the state of Missouri, declaring the Soccer Stadium Community Improvement District to be located in a blighted area and containing a severability and an emergency clause. The following board bill was reported out of Public Safety with a due pass recommendation. Board Bill 65, sponsored by Alderman Coder and the following alderpersons: Ingrassia, Oldenburg, Martin, Narayan, Gunther, Green, Hubbard, Howard, and Davis. An ordinance amending Section 2, Paragraph 1401130 of Ordinance 69346 to permit drink license holders to sell intoxicating beverages not in their original package for consumption on or off the licensed premises, and amending Section 2, Paragraph 1401390 of Ordinance 68536 to permit licensed restaurants or bars to sell intoxicating beverages for consumption on or off the licensed premises, and amending Section 4, Paragraph 1403040 of Ordinance 68536 to permit Sunday drink license holders to sell intoxicating beverages for consumption on or off the licensed premises, and amending Section 1 of Ordinance 68786 to permit licensed persons to sell intoxicating beverages at retail not in their original package, and amending Section 4, Paragraph 1405125 of Ordinance 68536 to permit the refilling of liquor, amending Section 6, Paragraph 1405140 of Ordinance 68536 to create an exception to the prohibition of the sale of intoxicating beverages to persons in an automobile, and containing a sunset clause. The following board bill was reported out of Public Utilities with a due pass recommendation. Board Bill 66 as amended, sponsored by Alderman Coder and Alderwoman Ingrassia, an ordinance submitting to the qualified voters of the city of St. Louis a gross receipt tax to be imposed on telecommunication providers and fiber network providers as set forth herein that are not otherwise currently subject to such taxes, providing for an election to be held therefore and the manner of voting thereat, and upon the passage of said ballot measure and amendment to the City of St. Louis Ordinance 67717 as codified in section 2334020 of the revised code of the City of St. Louis and section 233401 through 2334030 of the revised code of the City of St. Louis, reflecting gross receipts tax to be imposed as approved by the voters of the City of St. Louis. That is the extent of second reading.
We'll dispense with line item 14, perfection consent.
Board Bill 51, sponsored by Alderman Boyd. An ordinance amending section 1 of ordinance 62101 codified in chapter 1762010 of the revised code of ordinance of the City of St. Louis to designate the parking commissioner as the chairperson of the parking commission and to designate the parking commission as the city's authority responsible for overseeing public parking, including planning and coordinating public parking policies, programs, and operations for any parking facility or area that is owned, leased, or otherwise managed or controlled by the parking division, whether in whole or part, and to establish the duties and responsibility of the parking commission, and to establish the duties and responsibilities of the treasurer as the supervisor of parking meters. Board Bill 20, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance enacting a curfew for Chambers Park, Jet Bank Park, Norman Say Park, Terry Park, Tiffany Park, prohibiting individuals from idling, wandering, strolling, playing, or otherwise being in or upon the premises of said parks and public areas immediately adjacent to said parks daily throughout the year between the hours of 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 2, sponsored by Alderman Rhodey, an ordinance recommended by the Planning Commission on April 1st, 2020 to change the zoning of property as indicated on district map and in City Block 4969 from D, multiple family dwelling district, and F, neighborhood commercial district, to the D, multiple family dwelling district at 4172 and 4178 Folsom Avenue, so as to include the described parcels and land in City Block 4969 and contain an emergency clause. Board Bill 3, sponsored by Alderman Rhodey, an ordinance establishing and creating a planned unit development district for city blocks 2184, 218501, 218704, 218703 to be known as the Iron Hill Planned Unit Development District and containing the severability clause and an emergency clause. Board Bill 4, sponsored by Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, an ordinance recommended by the Planning Commission on April 1st, 2020 to change the zoning of property as indicated on district map and in City Block 387418 from E, multiple family dwelling district to H, area commercial district at 5637 Persian Avenue, so as to include the described parcel of land in City Block 387418 and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 5, sponsored by Alderwoman Navarro, an ordinance recommended by the Planning Commission on April 1st, 2020 to change the zoning of property as indicated on district map and in City Block 505101 from B, two family dwelling district to H, area commercial district at 614 Lake Avenue, so as to include the described parcel of land in City Block 505101 and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 7, sponsored by Alderman Bosley, an ordinance recommended by the Planning Commission on April 1st, 2020 to change the zoning of property as indicated on district map and in City Blocks 968 and 969 from both CG, multiple family dwelling district and local commercial and office district, and F, neighborhood commercial district to G, local commercial and office district, so as to include the described parcels of land in City Block 968 and 969 and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 22, sponsored by Alderman Coder, an ordinance recommended by the Planning Commission on May 6, 2020 to change the zoning of property as indicated on district map from J, industrial district to G, local commercial and office district in City Block 377, so as to include the described parcels of land in City Block 377 and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 60, as amended, sponsored by Alderman Boyd, an ordinance relating to the appointment of and salaries of certain employees in the Recorder's Office pursuant to section 82610 of the revised statutes of the state of Missouri by repealing ordinance 70336, allocating certain other employees to a grade with rate containing an emergency clause and an effective date. Board Bill 45, sponsored by Alderman Vollmer and President Reed, an ordinance pertaining to the transit sales tax imposed pursuant to section 94660, as directing the treasurer of the city of St. Louis to deposit funds received pursuant to said sales tax in the city public transit sales tax trust fund, account 1, appropriating $9,354,000 from the said sales tax for the period herein stated to the bi-state development agency for certain purposes and containing a severability and an emergency clause. Board Bill 46, sponsored by Alderman Vollmer and President Reed, an ordinance pertaining to the transit sales tax imposed pursuant to section 94660, directing the treasurer of the city of St. Louis to deposit funds received pursuant to said sales tax in the city public transit sales tax trust fund, account 2, appropriating $9,354,000 from the said sales tax for the period herein stated to the bi-state development agency for certain purposes containing a severability and an emergency clause. Board Bill 47, sponsored by Alderman Vollmer and President Reed, an ordinance appropriating the sum of $17,860,000 as described in section 94600 through 94655, revised statutes of Missouri 2000, as amended for the period herein stated, which sum is hereby appropriated out of the Transportation Trust Fund to the bi-state development agency for the transportation purposes containing a severability and emergency clause. That is the extent of perfection consent calendar.
Alderwoman from the first.
Mr. President, members of the board, I know it's kind of hard. I had my hands up before the perfection consent calendar was read.
I saw it up, but she had started already. But
okay.
But you're still in order to move.
Okay. Okay, because I wanted to take off of the perfection consent calendar, and I had a note here. Board Bill 20, which I think is going to have a problem passing the Constitution, and Board Bill. No, that was the only one. Board Bill 20.
All right, Madam Clerk, please make note of that. Place Board Bill 20 at the end of the regular perfection calendar.
So noted.
Alderman from the 22nd, you recognize on the motion for the perfection consent calendar.
Mr. President,
26.
Board Bill 20. Do we have a Board Bill 20 on perfection?
Perfection consent.
Perfection consent.
I didn't
Yes,
see.
yes. Board Bill 20 is on the end at the end of page 11.
Gotcha. Okay, I move for adoption of perfection of consent calendar.
It's been moved
Second.
moved by the Alderman from the 22nd, seconded by the Alderman from the 10th. Any further discussion? It's been moved and seconded. Alderwoman from the 20th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I had also wanted to move Board Bill 25, which is on the inform.
All right, Madam Clerk.
For the benefit of the Health Department, this is a pretty simple.
All right, Madam Clerk, please make note of that. Place Board Bill 25 at the tail end of the regular perfection calendar. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? It's been moved by the Alderman from the 22nd, seconded by the Alderman from the 10th, that we adopt our perfection consent calendar minus Board Bills 20 and 25. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Board Bills for perfection.
Board Bill 29, sponsored by Alderman Vaccaro, Alderwoman Howard, and Alderman Vollmer, an ordinance submitting to the qualified voters of the city of St. Louis a proposal to revise section 2 of Article 8 of the City of St. Louis Charter, which requires city employees to reside within the boundaries of the City of St. Louis, and thus allow said employees, except for city agency and department directors appointed by the mayor, to reside outside the boundaries of the City of St. Louis, and providing for an election to be held for voting on the proposed revision and the manner of voting thereat, and for the publication, certification, deposit, and recording of this ordinance and containing an emergency clause.
Alderman from the 23rd, you recognize on the perfection of Board Bill 29.
So first off, I want to thank,
No, first we need a motion.
so I'd like a motion to
Perfect.
adopt or
Perfect.
bill number 29.
23, yeah, 29.
No, 29.
Yeah, it's been moved by the Alderman from the 23rd. Entertain a second on that motion.
Second.
Seconded by the Alderman from the 10th. Alderman from the 23rd, you please proceed.
Okay, so I would like to thank, I know this was a little bit controversial last year across the board. I did talk to the caucus members who have graciously said, Joe, okay, we're not gonna oppose it. And some of the members called me and they're gonna support it. You know, they went up to Jeff City to basically pass out the same thing, go around the city voters, and it would be for the police and not all the employees. I believe strongly that we should put this back in front of the voters of the city to decide, not have it decided up in Jeff City. The only thing that stopped it in Jeff City was the COVID thing. They kind of quit meeting and things became scrambled. I think we owe it to the voters to let them decide. They're the ones that put it on. And I would, you know, think that they would be the ones that should at least have a say. There's somewhat of a rush on doing this because I want it on the November ballot. So, you know, I'm kind of moving through this quickly. I'm certainly open for any questions. We debated it pretty strongly last year. So that's all my comments.
Okay. All right. Thank you all. Before we move forward, I want to straighten out one thing on the agenda. Alderman from the 20th, you asked that Board Bill 25 be added to the perfection calendar. Board Bill 25 is on the third reading informal calendar. Earlier in the meeting, I asked if anyone wanted to move anything off of the informal calendar and no one responded. I kept it open for quite a while to ask if anyone wanted to move anything off the informal calendar. It is not on the perfection consent calendar. It is on the third reading informal calendar.
Mr. President, I'm sorry, I was having technical difficulties at that time. This is just a pretty standard bill on behalf of the Health Department.
Yeah, I'm not worried about that. I'm just saying that technically it was not on the perfection calendar or the perfection consent calendar. It's on the third reading informal calendar. So the bill is up for third reading, not perfection today. Please proceed, Alderman. I think you're muted.
Oh, no, I know. Well,
No, I'm the Alderwoman from the 20th. So we can. Alderman from the 20th. So what would you like done?
If possible, I'd like to third read and finally pass Board Bill 25 today, if possible. But I understand, given the technical difficulties at the beginning of the meeting, that we were unable to move it in that time.
We're calling a special meeting next week. So take it up then, because we're past that point in the agenda at this point.
Thank you, Mr. President.
All right. Alderman from the 23rd, please proceed.
Anyway, so that's kind of where I'm at. I believe doing this up in Jeff City, going around the voters that actually voted this in is wrong. And I think it should be on a ballot to let the voters decide whether or not we want residency to go away or stay. And it's a very mixed thing. You know, there's a lot of voters that say people should live in the city, and there's a lot of voters that say, you know, we need to get more city workers. We need to reach farther out. So I'm open for questions. I would really like to get this on a ballot. I did try to talk to everyone that I could or that I could get a hold of. And I do appreciate that the caucus did meet on this and took a neutral position so that each member, you know, could kind of be on their own. They didn't take a stance against it. So I'm open for questions or comments.
Okay. Alderwoman from the 5th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. I don't have any questions, but I do have a comment regarding this bill. I think we all know like what hurdles we face as a city when it comes to employment. And for years, you know, it's been this whole issue that residency is an issue, and it's an issue especially for police officers and tree trimmers and other jobs or whatever. But we have yet to receive any information or any data to support that there's a direct correlation with our lack of officers and the fact that we have residency. And I always wonder and question why a person would not want to live in a city that they would be willing to protect. I feel that there are so many issues that we have regarding our personnel department that we have regarding so many people applying for jobs and they don't get these jobs. And so I feel that we haven't exhausted all of our resources and all of our means to truly revisit the process and see where the gap is, because clearly we know that there is one when it comes to our hiring practices, whether it's police officers or 1,000 jobs online, you know, across the department. So I feel that that's an issue that we need to revisit. I feel the process and the way in which this was handled after it didn't get past our body and it was, you know, kicked up to the state. I felt that that was disrespectful every step of the way. And, you know, sometimes it blows me away when people are so adamant about putting things back before the voters, but we've been begging and griping to get reduction of the board back to the voters for I don't know how long now, because we understand the importance of having African-American representation down here at the board. So I feel it's kind of disheartening when we are expected to understand the process and let the voters decide on one issue, but not the other. I think that's what's wrong with our community and everything. You know, people, they don't try to find that middle ground. They just have this notion that, look, it passed once and this is what it is. And, you know, the African-American caucus has been griping, and we've commented about this for hours on top of hours on how that process misled the voters. And, you know, people are stuck in it and they just want to reduce it. But I think when you don't revisit things to see what's in the best interest for everyone, then I believe that creates a problem. And so I get it that, you know, residency is an issue, but for me, representation of my community is an issue. And so that's all the comments that I have regarding that. But I just hope that as a body and as a city, we can't be so stuck on one thing and not willing to waver for the betterment of everybody. If one issue should be as important as all issues, and that's all I have, Mr. President. Thank you.
All right. Alderman from the 18th.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, when we say the police need to, we need to defund the police. The police are part of the problem. And the reason I say that, they create crime by taking 40% of the budget. We have 100 parks, very little organized activity that I know of. And in my ward, we have no supervisors. We have no park rangers. People are selling drugs. And it's a health issue in the community because they keep people from being active. So we actually, and the false premise that the police gonna solve problems is, first of all, is not their job. That's an ideology that is being promoted by the right wing to contain all of the citizens. I'm not talking about just Black citizens. When the Black citizens suffer, our whole city suffer. We don't have park activities in South St. Louis. We don't have, because when I asked at a conference, webinar, the park rangers are in the Central West End at Forest Park. And most of the many of the people who come in Forest Park don't even live in the city. Why are we prioritizing people who don't live here when in reality, for example, with park rangers, when the people in South St. Louis, north of Delmar and south of Delmar don't have any activities. And the parks closed down. When I was a kid, the parks closed down and stopped having activities because of the riot in 1958. When Blacks tried to enter Fairgrounds Park, where I learned to swim. The main point is, when we call ourselves hurting North St. Louis, we hurt the whole city. The other thing, is tests. We have plenty of people in St. Louis who don't need to pass a test, who could work, who have police records and don't have police records, that have done their time. They should stop being punished. We could reduce crime by jobs for people. So we don't need extra people. We have plenty of people who can do every job. The problem is right now we got a bunch of people on payroll doing absolutely nothing that we were talking about giving bonuses to, giving them a raise. Many good city workers are doing a terrific job and they deserve a bonus. But you just don't give bonuses to people, everybody. Bonuses is for special efforts. We don't give raises to everybody. We give raises to those who earn raises. So, and there are many who have earned a raise. There are many police officers who have gone beyond the call of duty. But there are many as an institution. The police department need to be controlled by the people in the community who are paying their taxes. For example, we have these so-called business districts. Why do we need them when we have police who are supposed to be out there patrolling the neighborhoods? In my ward, I'm going to oppose anything that is costing my voters, that is not providing services to the taxpayers. And one of the services, like we have lots that are not cut. We have streets that need paving. We have parks that are not that need repairing. We have water division, and we have refuge dumping that is not being picked up. We have the West Nile virus coming up, and we have tires, water, mosquitoes. We have the Zika virus that could occur in the city. Because it occur in the 18th ward, it's not going to stay in the 18th ward. And I'm not talking about black people. I have white people, white voters. I don't know how many, maybe a third, a fourth or more. My voters are white. I don't want anything to happen to any of my voters. So I want all of my voters to be able to come to all the parks. Not just, but they can't come whether they live north or south of them, because we don't have, it's not a family atmosphere. So the main point on putting this on the ballot, we will lose taxes. We might lose taxes. And if we put it on the ballot, we should put it on there, not right now, put it on there in April. Put it on there when Democrats come out. The Democratic Party run this city. No Republicans would be putting something on there when Democrats to favor Democrats. So we're going to have to put it on there to favor the working class, the poor people, the Democratic people. So, Mr. President and the board of all the people, we shouldn't rush to put this on the ballot. We should wait until we can win this and have safety for our constituents, and we need to lead from the front and not behind. We need to say, educate the voters about the consequences of putting this on the ballot, because the people who vote in November are new voters, they are Republican voters, and they are right-wing voters, some of them, and that's how ward reduction became the law when the race baiters, those who betrayed the Democratic Party and used the Democratic ticket to get in office, turned right back around instead, and then put that on the ballot so the Republican types, the conservative type, would vote. And they lied and said that it would save money, when in reality, it's going to cost money. And then it's going to cost, because all the people, North and South, we are the first defense for the voters. And so I'm saying we need to not put this on the ballot until we put ward reduction on it. And it needs to be when Democrats come out so we can defeat this fraud that is being perpetuated, talking about police gonna stop crime. No, we have 20 or more who are under indictment for crime, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. But the main point is not whether we have 20 or 100, but the main point is the scenario, is the ideology that has been promoted, that police gonna stop crime, and when crime and killings and everything else has increased. So in summary, the police industry, the law enforcement industry, and all the alphabets and prisons that go with it are taking our money and hijacking and threatening us, saying in other words, it's not openly threat, but it's saying in essence, scaring us. I'm gonna use the word scaring us, talking about if we don't have more policemen, we could cut crime in half. So I'm arguing the point that, look, we are not, I'm asking you to help save lives, help save people's property, help make our city greater, and help give us the peace of mind by being honest and going on the best practices to stop crime. And the best practice is to food, shelter, clothing, medical care, and jobs for all those who want jobs, and a guaranteed annual income for those who are unable to work because of mental or physical disability, drug treatment, and other things. Drug treatment has shown to reduce crime. Almost half of the killing, according to most books I've read, as well as the police chiefs that I've talked to, and the current police chief, all killing in St. Louis, almost half of them are drug related. So why don't we have drug treatment? Supply and demand. Let's cut out, and so if we do that, we will have a safer city. And I don't want anybody running around talking about some failed policies, which is the police industry's policy. So thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Alderwoman from the first.
Mr. President, members of the board, I agree much with what the Alderwoman from the 5th and the 18th said. When you're here long enough, things go in a vicious circle. First of all, I want to say what the police got their raise when I was the chair of public employees. It was with great misgiving that I sponsored that bill, but wanted to think that I was doing everything I can do to try to make our police officers happy, because I did grow up right down the street from the police station where I grew up, and I went to school with the children of police officers. My family is full of military, and so against my better judgment, because I even got up on the floor when I sponsored the bill and said that if I were not the sponsor, I would have a lot of problems with it. The Alderman from the 18th hit it right on the nail on the head when he said you don't give bonuses to everyone. I was especially troubled that we were giving the $6,000 raises to the police, no matter how good or bad they were, because in that raise was some very bad apples, and we weren't giving raises to other city employees. I had been working on that, and I really was trying to work with the police chief who grew up in the ward that I represented. It was called the 20th then, the public safety director. I'm his alderperson right now. I was trying to work with them, and I was hoping that the police would see we value them and that they would want to be part of our success in the city of St. Louis, that they would want to be help St. Louis grow and be a good place to live. But what I hear from some of our police officers, Wisconsin, not all of them, and I actually have quite a few police officers that live in my ward, is that they want to run the agenda. And that's when you start to get a police state. That the police work for the citizens. The citizens don't work for the police. So I'm kind of, now they made me embarrassed that I sponsored that bill, because the whole thing that the mayor did when she went up to Jefferson City, she didn't just go around the Board of Aldermen. She took the police chief and the public safety director. She also went around the state reps and state senators up in Jefferson City. And they were quite taken aback. I would like to correct a little bit what the alderman from the 23rd said, in that he said only because of COVID did it get slowed down. It got slowed down because that resolution that we passed at the Board of Aldermen, actually, people read it. I spoke to numerous of people that did not represent us about the resolution, because there was some misinformation from the mayor's office saying, oh, it was just Sharon Tyus, and they were surprised at how many people had voted for the resolution. I actually supplied that. We set things up. I worked with both state senators and state reps, and they were able to stop it because what the mayor had proposed to them was not true and didn't ring true. And what the police chief and the public safety director went up there and said, which was, this is the only way we can get police. It's not, as the alderwoman from the 5th said, there's been no statistical data that says that's true at all. And I often said that they don't tell the truth about the police because they don't count the cadets. But I specifically want to speak to an issue about forestry workers, which the alderwoman from the 5th brought up. We have forestry workers that come and work every year. When we were saying we couldn't get tree trimmers and people to do certain things, I sent some people down who applied for full-time work. They never would hire them as full-time. So that when I called to inquire about it, which I never try to put my influence in on hiring people, but I didn't understand. They said, oh, the personnel said, well, we're going to hire the temporary people first, and then we'll get to hiring the full-time. That was last year. They have never got to hire the full-time. And in fact, the people who were hired as temporary workers got hired again already and out there working as temporary workers. So if you're pushing agenda, which the mayor is, which she does not, she wants to get rid of residency. She was for Better Together. She's for anything that takes away the checks and balances of the Board of Aldermen. Then you push not to hire people full time. Well, why wouldn't you if you can't find people? What about the people you keep hiring every year for temporary part time? They work full time. It makes no sense unless you have to agree that they're doing that on purpose. And that's what happens often when people have an agenda. When I took statistics, there's a book called Lying with Statistics, and it's how to massage and make statistics give misinformation. And that's what we do oftentimes with the police scare or with the forestry. And then we go out and hire contractors, private contractors, because that's how you reward your friends with these contracts and stuff, instead of hiring people to be part of the Civil Service Commission, which if you read our charter, that is what it says. That is why we have civil service. And it is why also that we have a strong personnel director, because so many politicians try to go around civil service. That's what we're doing when we're hiring these permanent temporary people. We're going around civil service. We're not giving people the full benefits of being a full-time city worker, and that is ridiculous. So that bothers me. When I hear the Alderwoman from the 5th talk about, well, yeah, you can run and you can bring this ordinance to submit to the qualified voters, a proposal to let the people move out the city, but you can't. The mayor says if we have 15 votes and we pass that out about the ward reduction, that she will veto that, because that's her agenda. Again, that's her agenda. You cannot make me believe that the people were not fooled that voted for this, at least in my communities, maybe some other communities, they were fooled. And what really, that voted for ward reduction, and what really pains me is that the people who come down here and said, well, the people voted for it, and 2 and 3 times they voted against it. And they kept bringing it, and they took me off the board because I used to raise hell about it. So you took every advantage you could to get this passed. In my ward, it didn't get passed, because as soon as we told people what time it was, and we spent the effort to do it, they were like absolutely opposed to it. In fact, we also opposed when the city took over the police, and they opposed that too. If you give citizens a full amount of information, they can make good decisions. This was pushed by a wealthy billionaire who lives in our community, who over and over and over, we had defeated him, and little by little, he comes back and takes chunks. And the things that we say that we are unitedly against, then we go ahead and get it. I have always said I will be for ward reduction the day I hear a teacher who has 28 kids in her room says, oh my God, we can do so much better with 56. That is never going to happen. And that's what happens with ward reduction, is that you have these people over in North St. Louis telling you this is going to be horrible for our community. This is going to hurt our community. And this year, in these last few weeks, we talked about systemic and institutional racism. That's what ward reduction is. It is a way to get rid of more African-American representation. Is what people do. They start to, when white people start to be not the majority in a city, and you can go look this up, then they start to say, let's run people by citywide, anything. But right now, whites can't win citywide, because the black city is a black city. That's a majority population. So when you look around this city, and you look around the Board of Aldermen, and you see only 11 black aldermen on its face, that's systemic and institutional racism. Because when we lost the black aldermen, we should have been gaining. We should not have stopped at 13. We should have went to 14 and 15, because we're the majority. Because all those people who want to talk about systemic racism and criminal activities, I want you to understand systemic racism starts at the Board of Aldermen, and in the mayor's office, and in judges, and that's local, state, and federal. So now we come to this thing. Oh, we gotta let the people move out the city, and we get all these things. They can't find any places to live. They can't find any good places to live. The firemen got to live someplace else. The police officers got to live someplace else. Well, then why don't they just go get jobs there? Where those great places are to live, go get jobs. Because if you work for private industry and they tell you, my parents worked for factories all of their lives. And so they would tell you, you better not drive a foreign car up on our lot. Now, people can drive what they want to, but they could not drive it up on those union lots. And there was a reason for it. Now, if my mom and her family didn't want to follow that, they were free to go get a job someplace else. This overabundance we have had to thinking that having more police officers is the solution is a false narrative. What you need to do, and I proved it, and just to tell you how systemic racism is, the years that we were the 20th ward, we grew. I built something new every time. We didn't lose population. So what does systemic racism do? It tears positive things up in North St. Louis. And that's how you look at systemic racism. That doesn't happen in South St. Louis and the Central Quarter. You protect and said, oh, this is growing. But systemic racism says we will tear up positive things. So now you are saying we have to, oh my God, Black people are going to be the mayor. Black people are going to, they're already the majority, all the elected officials. And that's that other systemic racism and Beckyism that I call it, that thinks that Black people can't govern. We can govern. We can govern. We can do it. We can't do as poor a job as you've done, because I would never think of this tearing up positive things going on in South St. Louis and instituting something as you did back in 2001. That's just abusive to my community. Sam Moore, as the Alderman of the 4th, used to say, come and look at his ward. But what he didn't tell you is that part of his ward comes up to my back door. And all that part that you, the white people and some Black people put into the 4th ward is all falling down now, because it doesn't help to put my community in a ward that it is not successful. It just tore up my community. And that's what it did in all the communities that happened. But only in a city like ours would we do something like that. So now we have to come up with a plan. We have to make people scared. You're not going to have the police. Everything the police has asked for, our citizens have given them to them. We have given them raises. We have passed bond issues. We have passed public safety issues. No matter what we do, though, what they really want to do is they want to police us and live someplace else. And I'm speaking to the police, because these are the very people who were in the streets a few years ago, because the protesters chanted, whose streets are streets, which they were right, citizen streets. The police went out there with their arrogance, and the person who's now suing the city for racial discrimination, O'Toole, out there bragging about the police on the street, whose streets are streets. And you're hearing this from somebody who's been a police person all my life. As I have watched, and you say a few bad police officers, I want to say the ones who are quiet, the ones who stand by and watch it, you're just as bad or not worse as the police people who are doing it. If you don't speak up, just like that guy that sat there and watched the police officer choke the life out of Mr. Floyd, you're just as bad. You're collaborating with them. The thin blue line, you want to tell old ladies, oh, tell on your neighbor down the street. But then you tell me, oh, I can't say anything. And I talk to them. Oh, I can't say anything because then I'll be ostracized in the police department. Then you shouldn't be a police officer. If you don't want to live in the city and you're a city resident and you don't want to live in the city, you want to work and take our tax dollars, it's a big mistake. All you got to do is look at what happened to our teachers when they were allowed to move out. Big mistake. I have a lot of teachers that live in my ward. For years and years and years, when they would pass bond issues for the St. Louis public schools, my husband worked for the public schools. I worked on bond issues year after year after year. But it was always so funny to me that I would get these teachers that would call me and be lobbying for this bond issue I was already working for. And then when I would say, then what ward do you live in? Oh, I live in the county. I live in the county. You want me to change my taxes and improve and pay more taxes, but you want to run out there and you want to take your tax dollars to another community. I find that appalling. I have there is a law that says we, the members of the Board of Aldermen, have to live in our ward. I think it is a very good thing. I think that we have abused it because we have not done redistricting right, so we don't have them spread out the way it's supposed to. But when you're in your community, you are a little bit more hesitant to pass bad laws because it affects you too. We have already seen police officers that patrol on a us and them basis. It's us versus them, not we are all in this together, good or bad. Where I live, I'm in this good or bad. Until you destroyed my community with this racist, systemic, institutionalized redistricting, I had an award that had the most Democratic voters, which were Democrats, very, very stable, working in middle class, and some poor. To the point where I had some black aldermen when I first came down said, well, your ward looks like a South St. Louis ward. Why are you always raising hell? Because I wanted to look that good and better. That's why. But I never thought, oh, let me move, because a few blocks away, it was a different thing. A few blocks away, there were people that were poor. I never thought, let me move out of here. What I thought was, let me stay here and make things better. Let me put my knowledge to make things better in this community. What I hear from people is they want to take everything good from the city of St. Louis and want to run someplace else. And what do you think that will do to our tax base? What will happen to that? So I don't understand why we keep coming with this thing to let people move out the city, because I get no response from my community saying that's what we want to do. That's a great idea. They do not understand why we even talk about that. And when they were talking about, when the mayor went up and talked about letting the police move out, and I believe we already have an illegal law letting the firefighters move out and even the police move out. But what we did agree was that the police that had already moved out, because when we did that, it was while it was under state law, and that those police could stay out. But as of when we took it over in 2013, those police have to live in the city. So that's gone. But the firefighters has a law up on record, which I believe contradicts our charter and needs to be taken back. And we need to walk that back, and we need to go up to Jefferson City and get that changed. And I was appalled that the head of the firefighters, not the black firefighters, but Mr. Alford went up there with the mayor supporting this moving out of the city. You are drawing resources. We only have a limited amount of resources, and people are part of our resources. So when we start talking about getting rid of our resources, it is not just money. It is young people. It is people of many different races. It is all kinds of things that make your city a great city. And if Mr. President, members of the board, if the alderman from the 23rd would yield.
Alderman from the 23rd will yield the question until the alderman from the 1st.
Sure.
Alderman from the 1st, please proceed.
Mr. Alderman Bacaro, I would like to ask, so you have been, pushing this thing for a while. Is it that the people in your community are pushing, saying they want the people to move out of the city? Is that why you keep bringing this up? I don't understand.
No.
I'm trying to understand your point of view.
So no, not only am I pushing this, I am also the co-sponsor of a bill with John to put back on a ballot about the 28 wards. These are things I believe in. A couple things that nobody's paying attention to. One, they're going to go to Jeff City and this is going to go through. Let's don't give it to the voters for them to vote on. Let them do it in Jeff City. The ballot initiatives that are going on are out of control. Do you realize that there's going to be on this next ballot a thing to do away with the Democratic Party? It changes how elections go. The elections will be a non-partisan election. It's on the ballot. So you don't have to worry about a lot of stuff. The way it's set up is that if there's 20 candidates on the thing, you can vote for all 20. You don't even have to pick one. Let's let the ballot initiatives run the city. Let's let Jeff City run the city, or let's send it back to the voters. I'm just as passionate about this as I am about the 28 wards. If you know me, and you do, I'm passionate about what I believe. I believe on the 28 wards, there was a thing in South St. Louis. There was a grandfather clock, time's ticking. I think it was a bunch of crap. And I know you're not supposed to say it on TV. I don't care. But I know that was garbage. I know how that was sold. I'm passionate about both. I'd like to see both go back to the voters. Now, I did talk to people that said, gee, you know what, Joe, we're fine. We're going to support you. And I've got a couple texts that maybe they're not. That's fine. Let's let it be done in Jeff City. Let's don't go to the voters of the city. Let the ballot initiatives go through, because after the next election, the Democratic Party is going to be done. We haven't even talked about that. But when it goes to that, which is the elections are going to be United Democrat or Republican, it's going to be a great sell. And they were paying $4 a signature. Let's let the ballot initiative people, let's let Jeff City do it. So when you ask why, this has nothing to do with north, south, east, or west of the city. It's what I believe. I believe the voters of the city have the right to address this, not Jeff City and not a ballot initiative. That's where I'm at. I'm in that on all this. The systemic racism we keep talking about is so prevalent on this board on both sides. I'm really at wit's end.
Excuse me, Alderman. Okay, excuse me. There is no such thing as on both sides. But when you go on with that, that is a false narrative. Go ahead and finish, and then I will address that false narrative. You cannot confuse racism. You better look up what systemic racism means. There is no way in the world Black people have systemic racism at this Board of Aldermen. Please do your research.
The voting in many cases falls straight down north, south, black, white lines. That's a fact. Look at the votes. I am probably one of the few that have absolutely sided with the caucus. So this is where I'm at. Vote yes, vote no, however you feel. Let's let Jeff City run the city. Let's let the people that are going to go out and pay for ballot initiatives to run the city. I believe that the citizens have that right to answer this question. Do you believe that the people of the city of St. Louis it goes to the voters? I believe the 28 ward reduction should go to the voters. You asked the question. My question is, I'm passionate about both.
No, my question was to you, and you went on to other things, and so that's fine. My question to you was that were the people in your community pushing this and saying, we want the people to live out of the city? That was my question to you.
No. It is
okay.
Something that I believe in because it was up in Jeff City. It's been at the Board of Aldermen. We didn't do anything. It's going to pass in Jeff City. I'm looking at what I believe. And these are things I believe. And I'm not going to hold against. You want to vote for it, you vote for it. If you want to vote against it. Where I'm at is, let's let Jeff City run St. Louis City. We don't even control. I'm not going to go off on other things. The answer to the question is no.
Okay. So you did go off on other things. I want to address some things. I think the people of the state of Missouri have proven themselves much smarter than the Republican majority up there thinks they are. When I got elected, again, things go in vicious circles. When I got elected, it was all Democrats in 91. The Democrats controlled everything. Every seat, most of the seats in both the House and the Senate. They had the governor, and through not just racist redistricting, but gerrymandering, and a lot of it, stupidity on the Democratic part. The Republicans took over because white Democrats were so eager to take over Black Democratic seats, especially down in the boot hills, and they did, and then the Republicans took it. So I've watched it for a very long time, and I was on the state party for a long time, and advised the state party some things that white Democrats they need to do different. The most loyal party members you have are Black women. Statewide, federal, Black women vote 90-something% Democrat, the most. So anybody who tears up a Black woman's district, that's how, because see, people don't do that. That's systemic racism. Black people have never had, I want you to understand this, the control at the Board of Aldermen in any length of time to even have systemic racism. Never mind what racism means, because I'm not even going to get into that. But long-term, it's been all white people running this. So when you don't understand what I mean by systemic racism, and I'm going to send you some stuff on it so you can understand what I mean by that. But I don't believe that just because the people up in Jefferson City want to pass something, that it gets passed. As I said, we have some people up there working equally hard against it. One of the things that was really convincing that you don't know, because I work with them, is in talking to the people who don't represent us and were Republicans, who I talked to, who called me because we sent the resolution, was they were very uncomfortable and did not want to get in the middle of what we were doing, because they don't want us ever, because at some time the worm turns. And if you start doing stuff to other cities, don't believe that that won't happen to you. Okay, that's one of the things I hear many times with white people who have been very racist to black people. And then they're like, oh, if you guys get control, you're going to do this back to us. If you get to say that, what you should say is, oh, I've done something wrong. How can I fix it? Okay, so the citizens of the state of Missouri, we passed Clean Missouri. The Republicans went back up there and they are now toying with it. The citizens are not dumb. They're going to come right back because they know what they were voting for in that. It was on both sides put out a lot of information. I'm not even saying citizens are dumb about voting about ward reduction. If that's something they really want, then they should have a chance to have it. I do not like the way it was done, and I don't like people who say, well, we had one vote for it when I know there were 4 times when you couldn't get it passed. And so you don't listen to people who say, this is how this is going to impact me. And already North St. Louis is struggling. So if you do something to impact us more, then you are contributing to something that you've already had years not to contribute to, but you've taken resources away. And I want to get back to what Alderman 18 said. When you don't put the proper resources, when you apply for block grant money, and then you put the block grant money someplace else, you put it in the central quarter in downtown, you take it and use for the Chase Park Plaza illegally, and then the day that you finish the Chase Park Plaza, you go, oh, I know we used that money illegally, so we're going to pay it back. There's people that went to jail during my tenure as the 20th ward about the block grant money. And they continue to use the block grant money, and then you build up something. In my ward, because I actually am married to a city planner, because I was a lawyer, we had our committee woman, we knew how to do development. So we built stuff. And every year that I built something else, people got more comfortable with saying, oh, no, this works over in that area of North St. Louis, instead of the narrative of what cannot work in North St. Louis. So again, systemic racism is an all-white alderman having a meeting and saying, let's tear that up. That's systemic racism. You show me where that has happened in any part of white South St. Louis where black aldermen have been able to get together and say, we're going to tear that up. I want to tell you something. The 6th Ward had a black alderman a long time ago. Since I have known this, ever since I have read about this and looked at this, what has happened with systemic racism is they have worked very hard to make it white. Now, the president won't tell you this, but I know this. When the president ran for 6th Ward alderman, the previous alderperson came out basically saying we can't have a black alderperson in the 6th Ward, okay? And then ran an independent person against them. That's systemic racism, okay? That does not believe that black people can govern. Systemic racism says Sharon Tyus is smart. So when we want to know how to do something, let's go to her. But we're going to make sure her ward does not have the seniority that every other ward has been able to do just by continuing to elect their person. I am the only person in history that has ever been redistricted and my ward tore up that was a senior alderperson. That's systemic racism, that white men get treated, that they've been in charge of it for all these years, and that when you find something successful, you would think of God to not only tear it up, but to break all tradition to do it and to take my vote away. That's systemic racism. That's what I'm talking about. So when Alderman from the 18th is talking about other ways to address the issue, and I've said this on the floor before, good, get rid of the police. When the young folks are now telling you to defund the police, and people are like, oh, that's crazy. No, that's not crazy. What it is that it has not worked. And this is going back again. When I was a young alderperson in 1991 with Stephen Conway, Alderman Tom Villa, who was the president then, had a board bill about the police. he let Alderwoman Geraldine Osborne of the 15th Ward carry his bill he was sponsoring. Geraldine got with us because she was very pro-police, and she was gonna make sure the police got money. The president had to come down off the podium and take his bill away from us, and we were appalled because we were so pro-police. We could just give them more money. That's been not working since 1991. So when I hear the young people now talking about defund the police, they're not saying we don't want police. We're saying we have put too much money into the police department and not into other things that we can make be successful. So they're not saying don't have police, but this thing about we just got to get more and more and more. Here's the thing that gets me. The police, Superstation 3 is over on Union. For them to get to the Central West End, they got to come through the first ward unless they drive around 70. I never see them in the first ward doing that community policing. I failed to drive down Euclid, and now Culpeper's is closed, that I do not see a 5th District SUV, and I've been making note of it, and I call the police chief, and I call the public safety director. Why don't I see this? My back window from the kitchen looks out onto Kings Highway. If I'm in my kitchen, a lot of times on my backyard, I can see who's going up and down Kings Highway. I do not see the police. How is it that the police police the Central West End, but not in my community? And I've been making this argument since 1991. I don't want to have to police murders. How about you do that community policing? How about you do the things that it doesn't get to murders? How about you put the money and build communities up so that people who have any resources, they're not usually the people that's committing crime. Crime is an opportunity for people a lot of times who don't have resources. I see on the Facebook, the former comptroller posts this all the time, that and basically I'm paraphrasing it because he says, if you don't invite a child into the community, they'll burn your community down. All this police killing of Black people, very few white people, that's institutional systemic racism. And the reason why the police have felt so comfortable is because we have federal laws that protect the police, that give them more rights than the citizens. The things that they're doing, they would never let us even leave the side without arresting us. So then now we got these police officers who have attacked members of our own Board of Aldermen who do not understand the right to peaceful protest. And now we want to give them the opportunity to move out our city instead of being part of a solution in our city. That is a mistake. Alderman, if you're mad at me about voting against this, I wouldn't care because I've been against the police moving out way before you came down here. That has always been my position. It was my position about me living in the first ward. I actually butt up against the 27th ward, so that one side of the street is the first and the other is the 27th. If I lived on one side of Claxton, I can represent the first. If I move across the street, I can't. That there is no difference in that, but that is the rule in the law, and I think it is a good law. When you live in your communities, you tend to be more careful about what happens in your community. I wish the police had to live all around in different communities, and I wish that they were very varied people who understood that we are their bosses. I'm gonna stop with this one. One other thing is that I want to say that I get up and I watch Dragnet. The other day, I'm watching Dragnet. It was about community policing. And Officer Friday was having the same conversation back in the 60s on Dragnet that I'm having now about police community policing and having the police live in your community. And I got up and I wrote down the episode in the season because I really wish you all would watch this, because they were having that same conversation back then about how you make the police part of your community, how they should be out there asking people, talking to people respectfully and being a community liaison, and that when you put a bad taste like our police have in the mouth now, that doesn't help anything. So now coming behind this with this thing of we're going to move them out the city and cover it up, we're going to let everybody move out the city. I am adamantly opposed to it. I think it's a big mistake. I think it's going to be if this gets passed, it's going to be the same mistake that we did with the 28 wards. And I don't know anybody who tells me that they think citizens should work for the city and live out, except a very limited few, and they end up being the police or the firefighters. So I'm requesting for a roll call, and I am adamantly opposed to Board Bill 29.
All right, thank you, Alderwoman. Alderwoman from the 8th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I realize that a lot of these points have been covered both today and in previous debates regarding the residency requirement. I think the context currently is important to raise again as well. The current uprising that we have is in direct results of what we saw in Minneapolis. And what Minneapolis has is 8% of their police force lives within the city of Minneapolis. Only 8%. They are currently contemplating instituting a residency requirement because the reforms that they have used for the police have not worked. They are working on dismantling their police department and creating a new version of public safety. That is something that I wish that we would do here. But we're going in the opposite direction. And so to say that we want to allow police to move out of our communities when we're seeing, the complete deterioration of police community relations that happened in Minneapolis that has led to a nationwide uprising I'm flabbergasted that we're doing this again. I am also I do think that if at all, it should be in front of our voters and not in front of Jefferson City. I think it was incredibly disrespectful that they were contemplating instituting something for our citizens, for our police force. But I don't want to be bullied by that. I don't think that we need to be bullied by that. I think that it's very frustrating to me as a city elected legislative representative that we are being gone over to go to Jefferson City. And so, yes, it should be the decision of our people, but my residents aren't overwhelmingly in favor of removing the residency requirement. This is not something that my residents are asking for. We're not hiring as the city of St. Louis. We have vacant positions that haven't been able to be filled. We're leaving them vacant because of our budget cuts right now. And our budget is not looking to rebound in the next year, probably. And this pandemic is going to continually economically impact us. And so if those positions are going to remain open, then what is going to be the effect of removing the residency requirement right now? Is it just that people are going to move out? Are we losing more people out of our neighborhoods? Are we losing more the police officers out of the neighborhoods that they're patrolling? I agree with Alderwoman Hubbard when she raised the point that why aren't people already getting hired in this, right? We still have not gotten answers as to whether or not residency is the actual issue that we're facing when we're not able to fill vacant positions. The police department has been moving cadets through, and they are, there are lots of people coming through, but then there are lots of people retiring. There are people taking the money and they're going to different departments around the region and in other places. And there are other ways that we can look at this, that to keep money here in the city of St. Louis, to keep our workers here in the city of St. Louis, to keep the tax revenue, to keep our neighborhoods intact. We need to work on our schools and, expanding the special school district, if that is what is necessary, to make it accessible for all parents and all children to receive quality education. We're working on early childhood education. The city of St. Louis is a place that we want people to want to live. And I think pulling this escape hatch, as I said last year, I think this is the wrong move. And particularly in this context right now, this has been a police and corrections led effort to remove the residency requirement. And when we are trying to move away from those things as a society to look at other methods of public safety, that we're not imprisoning as many people, we're not detaining as many people, we are trying to reshape our criminal justice system to remove this charter requirement right now, I think is wrongheaded. So if it goes back to the voters, then I will be vocal with this as it is, but I will be a no vote today.
Alderwoman from the 11th.
Thank you. I have heard so much talk about what is going on or what's gone on in Jeff City. And it's just amazing to me, the history revision that I've heard from all sides on what goes on in Jeff City. That's always the case, right? As someone who attended all the hearings on this matter in Jefferson City, I have a slight idea of what happened. And none of the none of what I've heard today is actually really what exactly happened in Jeff City on redistricting or on the residency issue. So, and I was there for all of that as well. So as the only alderman here, I can actually speak to what happened in Jeff City. May I inquire of the alderman from the 23rd, please?
Alderman from the 23rd will yield a question to the Alderman from the 11th.
Yes.
Alderman from the 11th, please proceed.
Thank you. You said you tried to reach out and contact everyone. Did I miss a phone call from you?
I don't have your number. The people that I did have numbers, I did try to call. I asked other aldermen to reach out to other people. This has been something that was on the agenda. Certainly, your phone probably has the same numbers that mine has. You can call me. The phone works both ways. So I get that.
I'm not the one who said I reached out and called people. We have a problem also here at the Board of Aldermen saying we're going to call people and we say one thing on this video and then another thing happens. So I just was wondering if I had missed a phone call. Yes, I did receive a phone call from someone else asking me about this.
Right, and they texted me, said that you were fine with this. And, you know, the best way I could count votes is either calling people or having people call people. I wish we were back at City Hall where you could walk the floor and count votes. You can't. I'm going strictly on trust. If people told me that they would support it, we're going to take a vote. They're either going to do what they said and support it and be good to what they say, or they're not. This is about if you strongly believe that the voters should have the right to say no to this, and you believe the voters in your neighborhood are going to vote no, then let the voters have that say. Because you know, because you do go to Jeff City, and you could tell me, maybe I am wrong, but I do know some of our state reps up there. I know Donna was supporting, trying to fast track to get this, you know, done up in Jeff City. And, you know, in Jeff City, if I'm right, it was just about firefighters and police. This is about everybody. And I honestly believe if you don't think it's the best thing, let your voters say it. Again, I'm one of these on the 28 ward thing. I think that—
Well, the voters actually did weigh in on that 28 ward thing. It's just that some of us don't.
Well, they weighed on it 4 times.
If you don't like what the voters do, then you're doing what Jefferson City does and then then you're repealing it again, but that's fine. I support this measure. I'm fine with this measure. I just also, listening to everyone today, I also think it's funny too, because we have some other issues on the agenda that are brought to us because of some of the things done in Jeff City. And it just all depends on who the player is playing in Jeff City. Sometimes we like people going to Jeff City. Sometimes we don't like people going to Jeff City. And I can see both sides of that today on our agenda, on who it's okay to go to Jeff City and who it's okay not to go to Jeff City. I also, I know that there are some outstate reps that have been working, I assume, I could be wrong, with the Police Officers Association in St. Louis. And that's who got them to file several different bills that have to do with our city. I don't like it. If I were mayor, I probably wouldn't have gone down and testified on these matters, or I would have testified saying that this is our business. But I feel like we've just digressed into whatever narrative we want to push today, when most of us weren't really there to see what happened. But I also am getting, I guess overall, I'm just sort of irritated with what we say on the video. Like, I tried calling everyone and that not being necessarily true, or having someone call and be the middleman because it's an uncomfortable phone call. That's not the most mature route, in my opinion. I will support the measure. I think that it doesn't necessarily matter where people live, doesn't necessarily make them good people. I think if somebody wants to do a good job, they can live anywhere. And it is important for me to listen to all of my colleagues on this matter and how their residents feel and how they feel in different areas of town. And also if they're from a marginalized or oppressed community, that certainly weighs heavily on my opinion. But I will support this measure. Thank you.
Okay, so let me just.
No, she's not, she didn't ask an additional question of you, Alderman. Alderman from the 20th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to inquire of the Alderman from the 23rd.
Alderman from the 23rd, will you yield the question to the Alderman from the
Absolutely,
20th?
yes.
Alderwoman from the 20th, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Alderman from the 20th.
From the 20th?
I'm sorry, from the 23rd.
Oh, okay.
From the 20th. I guess I have a question for you about the state legislature. Does the passage of this today at the Board of Aldermen prevent the state legislature from taking any action on this matter on residency?
Since I am not versed on that, I would say that if we do it here, at least we should give our constituents the choice. And yes, I would agree. I don't know. They seem to do whatever they want to do. But I understand that. But I still feel strongly that we should give the people the chance. We don't know. We put it on a ballot. Each ward, each alderman could speak to their community. Again, I'm hopeful when we go to the nonpartisan elections, because that's coming up on the next ballot, that does away with the Democratic Party, in a sense. I would hope that people are going to speak to their communities. That's going to do more damage to how we do things. That's going to be really interesting. But I don't want to just belabor this. I think that we put it on a ballot. It was on a ballot once before and the voters voted to have it. I think we put it back on a ballot. I think that, there's been a move to do away with it, and it'll be gone. It'll be gone. It'll be gone up in Jeff City. The nonpartisan elections, because people are out there paying $4 a signature to get things done. So the answer to the question is, I don't know. We voted on keeping animals and no animal stuff, and the people voted strongly.
I guess the question is more broad. Can the Board of Aldermen prevent the state legislature from taking action? And my understanding of state law is that no, we actually get our authority from the state, and the actions we take can't prevent the state legislature from taking any action. So especially and specifically in this case, so let's not fool ourselves to think that doing something here today will prevent the state legislature from taking subsequent action, or that the passage or failure at the voter box, the failure at the voter box wouldn't prevent the state legislature from doing what they wanted. I have to, we've talked a lot about making sure our voters are informed about various issues, some of which we've talked about here today. And I think making sure that our voters are informed is a very important component to everything that we consider down here. And I have to agree with the Alderwoman from the 5th, somebody with whom I don't often agree, but certainly agree wholeheartedly here on this issue, when she pointed out earlier this morning that we haven't done our due diligence to really look at what is causing the city to fail at hiring and filling positions that we have residents with capabilities of being able to do. We have a high unemployment rate, and yet we have a high vacancy rate within our own city openings. And that's really something that we need to take a good, hard look at before we consider making a major sweeping change to how we conduct hiring in the city of St. Louis. And as long as we continue to fail to do that first step of due diligence, I have severe and strong reservations about undoing this long tradition, this long-standing requirement of having our city employees live in the city of St. Louis, especially as the Alderwoman from the 8th pointed out. We have a lot of other pressing issues at hand and a lot of other things going on. So with that, I have no further questions, and I yield to my colleagues.
Alderman from the 21st.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to say I am against opening up residency for any city employees. I do think that city workers should stay in the boundaries of the city of St. Louis. However, this is not a board bill redoing that. This is a board bill asking voters to choose what they want. You know, we use this argument whenever it suits us or whenever it's comfortable or whenever it's convenient. We say, well, let's take it to the voters. But when it's something that we personally or against, it becomes a problem, just like ward reduction. I heard one of our colleagues say it passed the voters. Well, it also failed the voters 4 times too. And this is becoming a ongoing cycle and a continuing pattern where we say, let's listen to the voters when it suits us, and let's ignore the voters when it suits us as well. And I'm disappointed in that. And as far as not working together, I heard that same comment as well. As far as not working together, well, it's hard to work together with people who fundamentally don't see what you see when it comes to the city of St. Louis, or who does not understand the particular plot or the particular systemic ongoing that your community or your ward faces, right? This is a racist body, honestly. This is a racist body. We talk about racial equity. We parade around with racial equity. We got these Black Lives Matter flags. We put these Black Lives Matter signs in our windows, but yet we do not want to listen to Black elected officials in terms of war reduction. I'm done, Mr. President. I'm done. I'm done.
Okay. All right, Alderwoman from the 28th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the discussion and the comments from my colleagues here this morning. And like all of us, I think I would love for everyone to live in the city of St. Louis. I think the effects of sprawl and the fragmentation in our region have been devastating in a lot of ways. I also, the way I see our current residency requirement, I can see how it also contributes to the fragmentation of our region. And I feel the need to speak up for some of the compelling things that I've been hearing from my residents, as well as from people who would love to live in the city, but have chosen not to. I think there are a lot of personal reasons, very good, compelling reasons why someone may move out of the city, but still want to contribute to the city of St. Louis and still continue to work in the city. And while I would love for everyone to live here, if someone for whatever reason is not living here, but wants to contribute, I do not want to deprive our residents, of that contribution. At the same time, I think there's a lot of work we need to do, as my colleagues have pointed out, in terms of job training for residents. I would love to see a way for us to incentivize residency. I don't think that lifting this requirement is going to solve all of our problems, but I do think that it opens up, it breaks down some of the fragmentation that I see in our region and makes things possible for more people. So I do support putting this on the ballot. If the residents, say no, I completely respect that. But I do think it's a worthwhile conversation. I do think it's worth revisiting and putting on the ballot. I do want to say that I don't feel the same way towards ward reduction, since that has come up. When ward reduction has been put on the ballot by itself, it has passed. When it's been coupled with several other things, that is when it did not pass. So I do think there is a distinction here between these two issues. But I do think that there are compelling reasons to put this on the ballot, and I do see a lot of benefits to our city, and I agree it needs to be done with other measures that I do hope that my colleagues and the personnel division and others will work on. Thank you.
All right. Alderman from the 18th.
Can you hear me? Mr. President, thank you very much. Getting to ward reduction, I've been working on this personally, not just ward reduction, it was called A, B, C, and D. This agenda since 1957 has been pushed by big business, who is predominantly Republican. Throughout history of America,
point of order, Mr. President.
Please state your point of order.
We continue to hear about the reduction of the Board of Aldermen during this discussion. That is not germane to this board bill. We should be discussing the board bill pertaining to residency, not ward reduction.
Point of order well taken. Alderman from the 18th, please keep your comments germane to the subject matter in front of us, the Residency Bill, Board Bill number 29.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. The residency requirement that we are pushing is being rushed. I think, and it's been, and in this environment, which has changed this COVID-19, we have a huge unemployment throughout the country. There is absolutely, we need to revisit this both and see, with all these people being laid off, we have small business people who are going to need jobs, who are highly qualified. We have other people who've been laid off of various jobs who have clean record. We're talking about education. We're talking about everything you humanly need that we're looking for in the city. And they should be given an opportunity, as well as the people who don't have jobs should be, who live here should be, but the residency, we have a surplus of people who are very qualified for these jobs. Living in the city, our tax base is lower than it was at first. We have not found, we don't know, we do know if people move out of the city, it is certainly going to take some of the tax dollars away. And since we are low on tax dollars with this residency would, as people move, this will only complicate things. It will create unemployment. If we have people living in the city, our earnings tax, which I've lived in the city all my life and worked in the city most of my life, I happily pay earning tax, and this will help us with earning taxes. We are going to need taxes in order to keep our services going, especially with this COVID-19. And with people moving out of the city, it will hurt because unemployment will, we could reduce unemployment by hiring people within the city, and we could reduce crime, because crime, most of the people, and we could reduce gun violence. You can't be at work, most people do not commit gun violence who are at work. And most people do not commit crime when they're at work. And most people contribute to our tax base if they work in the city. So I oppose it because it will hurt our city. It will make our city more dangerous. It will reduce our tax base that we need these taxes more than ever since COVID-19 has already reduced our tax base, because they're talking about taking capital away from our wards. But we could possibly, with people staying in the city and paying taxes, there would be enough money right there to take care of the ward capital, which the voters voted for. And now the voters have voted for it. Now they're talking about tax. So when did we become so holy about how the voters vote? Somebody's talking about taking the tax, the voters, well, I'm gonna stay on topic about leaving the city and voting. We need to be consistent in that when the voters, we need to do a thorough research on residency requirement and also see what the consequences are, so that when the voters, and when and if they do vote for it, they are well informed. We do not have enough time right now, some of us, are the resources since we had the COVID-19 to educate the voters around the issue of a residency requirement. I think this is a rush job. I think it's being done in the dark, behind, in a sense, it's not, we don't have all the resources due to COVID-19 to do this, so that the voters are well informed as to the consequences of voting on this issue. So I think we need to wait until we have all of the information, so that the voters can get all the information if we decide to vote on it, so that they can make an informed decision.
Right. Thank you, Alderman. Alderman, from the 23rd, you recognize the close.
Yes, I would like to close on this. I would like to thank John Muhammad for being my friend. We'll start there. But he brings up a good point. We do things that, I don't know, maybe it's not systemic, and I'm gonna ramp this up fast. But ward capital, I mean, me and John fought tooth and nail, and ward capital was put there.
But
Not to what it should be.
Alderman, keep your
I know.
comments remain to.
Okay,
to
let me do this, because the dogs are going crazy in the other room and everything. I would just like to ask for favorable consideration on this.
All right, it's been moved by Alderman from 23rd, seconded by Alderman from 10th that we perfect Board Bill 29. There's been a request for roll call. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus.
No.
Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderman Bosley. Alderwoman Hubbard. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Alderwoman Hubbard.
Present.
Alderwoman Ingrassia.
Aye.
Alderman Coulter.
Aye.
Alderwoman Rice.
No.
Alderman Gunther.
Aye.
Alderman Vollmer.
Aye.
Alderwoman Martin.
Aye.
Alderwoman Murphy.
Aye.
Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green.
No.
Alderman Oldenburg.
Aye. Aye.
Alderman Rhodey.
Aye.
Alderman Todd.
No.
Alderwoman Davis.
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer.
No.
Alderman Muhammad.
Aye.
Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro.
Aye.
Alderman Narayan.
Aye.
Alderman Cone.
Pass.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderwoman Navarro.
Aye.
President Reed.
Aye.
Alderwoman Middlebrook.
Aye.
Alderman Bosley. Alderman Bosley.
No.
Alderwoman Howard.
Aye.
Alderman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Cone.
Aye.
20 aye votes, 6 no votes, and 1 present.
By your vote, you sustain the motion, Alderman from the 23rd and perfected Board Bill 29.
Can I at least
No,
say,
no, Alderman, we're out of time. Please proceed. Madam Clerk.
Board Bill 20 sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance enacting a curfew for Chambers Park, Jet Bank Park, Norman Say Park, Terry Park, Tiffany Park, prohibiting individuals from idling, wandering, strolling, playing, or otherwise being in or upon the premises of said parks and the public areas immediately adjacent to said parks daily throughout the year between the hours of 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. and contain an emergency clause.
Alderwoman from the 19th, you recognize on the perfection of Board Bill number 20.
Thank you, President Reed. I'd like to put the board bill on the informal calendar.
Madam Clerk, please make note of that. Please place Board Bill number 20 on the informal calendar.
So noted.
Third reading consent.
Board Bill 21.
Alderman from 22nd, you recognize on the motion for the third reading consent calendar.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move for adoption of the third reading consent calendar.
Second.
Moved by the Alderman from 22nd, seconded by the Alderman from the 10th. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyers. Alderwoman Middlebrook.
Aye.
Alderman Bosley. Alderwoman Hubbard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Ingrassia.
Aye.
Alderman Coder.
Aye.
Alderwoman Rice.
Aye.
Alderman Gunther.
Aye.
Alderman Vollmer.
Aye.
Alderwoman Martin.
Aye.
Alderwoman Murphy.
Aye.
Alderwoman Howard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Green.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg.
Aye.
Alderman Rhodey.
Aye.
Alderman Todd. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer.
Aye.
Alderman Muhammad.
Aye.
Alderman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Vaccaro.
Aye.
Alderman Narayan.
Aye.
Alderman Cone.
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderwoman Navarro.
Aye.
President Reed.
Aye.
Alderwoman Tyers.
Aye.
Alderman Bosley. Alderman Todd.
Aye.
Alderwoman Davis.
Aye.
25 aye votes.
Aye votes, staying the motion. The Alderman from 22nd and third read and finally passed the aforementioned bills. We will dispense with line item 18, report of enrollment.
Board Bill 21.
All other business being suspended, the president shall in open session affix his signature hereto to the end that these may become law. Alderwoman from the 19th, you recognize on the motion for the courtesy resolutions calendar.
President, members of the board, I move to adopt our courtesy resolution calendar.
Moved by the Alderman from the 19th.
Second.
Seconded by the Alderman from the 10th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. First reading of resolutions.
19, sponsored by President Reed, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, Alderman Muhammad, and Alderwoman Davis. The House of Representatives, the Justice and Policing Act 2020.
On the ballot.
Alderwoman from the 26th, you recognize on first reading of resolution 19.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. I would like to request unanimous consent for resolution 19.
Hearing no objection, please proceed, Alderwoman.
Resolution 19, what better way to celebrate Juneteenth? And in the spirit of Juneteenth, thank you, what Mr. Clerk explained it so gracefully to us. It's just standing in solidarity with Representative Karen Bass, our Congressman Lacey Clay, and 229 of their colleagues for this first ever bold, comprehensive approach to empower communities, address the systemic racism that we've been talking about all morning and bias and policing, build trust between our communities and law enforcement, and ultimately, I believe it will save lives. And Mr. President, I just want to thank you again for the work you're doing on Board Bill 63, because I believe it will change the culture of law enforcement and work to bring the community relations again in the city of St. Louis and policing better and forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on Resolution 19? Any further discussion on Resolution 19? Alderman from the 25th.
Can I make a motion that we pass this in bank?
Yes, yes, you can.
I'd like to make a motion.
Second.
Yeah, it's been moved by the Alderman from 25th, seconded by the Alderman from 13th, 23rd, and a number of others that we amend this resolution to be in bank. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Madam Clerk, please make note of that Resolution 19 amended in bank, adding every alderman's name to it. Alderwoman from the 26th, you recognize the close. Would you like to just make the final motion to adopt the resolution now?
Yes, I make the final motion to adopt Resolution 19 in bank.
It's been moved by the Alderman from 26. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from 23rd and a couple others. I think Alderman from the 16th. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Resolution 20, sponsored by President Reed, Alderman Boyd, Alderwoman Davis, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderwoman Boyd, Alderman Todd, Alderwoman Middlebrook, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, Alderman Muhammad, and Alderman Bosley, establishing Juneteenth, Independence Day as a city holiday.
Alderman from the 22nd, you recognize on the first reading of resolution number 20.
Mr. President, moves of members of the board, I move for unanimous consent.
Hearing no objection, please proceed, Alderman.
Yes, I move for adoption of resolution 20.
It's been moved by the Alderman from 22nd, seconded by the Alderman from 13th, and Alderman from the 23rd.
Bank, please.
And well, hold on, Alderman from 23rd.
I move that resolution 20 begin.
Hold on a second. Alderman from 22nd, please proceed.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, this should be on your Google Drive. I would like to move to put resolution number 24, substitute for 20, resolution 20.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 22nd that we introduce floor substitute for resolution number 20.
Second.
It's been moved. It's been seconded by the Alderman from 13th, Alderman from the 23rd. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Alderman from the 22nd, you recognize.
Yeah, Mr. President, members of the board, I would like to ask the clerk to read resolution number 24 substitute, please.
All right. Madam Clerk, would you read resolution 20 for substitute?
Yes. Resolution 20, floor sub, establishing the Juneteenth Independence Day as a city holiday. Whereas the City of St. Louis Board of Aldermen recognizes June 19th annually as Juneteenth Independence Day, and whereas Juneteenth is the oldest celebration in America, growing out of the experiences of African American, and is celebrating of the ending of the chattel slavery in America after the Union force won the Civil War and Confederate General Robert E. Lee surrendered on April 9th, 1865 to Union General Ulysses S. Grant And whereas African Americans in St. Louis founded one of the nation's largest freedom abolitionist organizations in the country, which supplied over 47,000 Black men and women already trained in military tactics and to the Union effort to win their freedom. And whereas Black communities throughout the United States found about freedom during the various days in 1865, with some of the most notable celebrations taking place June the 19th, 1865, when the announcement of the ending of slavery reached Texas, thus creating the name Juneteenth, African Freedom Day celebration. And whereas though there were numerous Freedom Day celebrations recorded throughout St. Louis during the mid and late 1860s, the largest and most organized being the Freedmen's Fair held during the week of June 22nd, 1868 at the Philharmonic Hall at 4th and Washington Street in downtown St. Louis, where it is reported that huge crowds attended, listened to music, visit informative exhibits, and acknowledge Black achievers, bought paintings of the famous abolitionists, attended lectures, heard speeches, and danced and helped raise money to build schools in various Black communities. And whereas the legacy of Juneteenth has continued in St. Louis with groups and individuals sponsoring Freedom Day activities, with progressive imperial and education centers being the oldest and longest running continuous institution sponsoring events since the late 1980s, Fountain Park Neighborhood Association and Fountain Park Community, Sabed Center in the Ville, and Miss Coffee Wright, organizing parades and a fair in Beckett Park over the years. And whereas federal, state, and city holidays serve as the ultimate reflection of the sacrifices of workers, soldiers, patriotic Americans who shed blood for democracy and gave of themselves for this country. And whereas no group is more deserving of this honor than the generations of African Americans who were key to building the United States and our beloved city. And whereas the City of St. Louis Board of Aldermen recognized Juneteenth as an opportunity for the city to educate city employees and our residents about the African American heritage and honor their lives, sacrifices, and contributions that were given to help build the American fabric. Now, therefore, let it be resolved by the Board of Aldermen of the City of St. Louis in accordance with Section 7B3 of Article 18 of the City Charter, we request that the Director of Personnel to do the following to make Juneteenth a recognized holiday for the City of St. Louis and a paid holiday for the employees of the city. Include a plan to adopt June 19 as official holiday of city government for the fiscal year 2021 through 2022 within the draft compensation ordinance submitted to the Civil Service Commission. Number 2, submit an amendment to the current compensation ordinance to include June 19th, 2021 as an official holiday of city government for fiscal year beginning 2020-2021. We further direct the clerk of the Board of Aldermen to spread a copy of this resolution across the minutes of these proceedings and prepare a commemorative copy to the end that it may be presented to all honorees at the time and place deemed appropriate by the sponsor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. President, members of the board, even though on June 19th, 1865, Black Americans were so-called free from slavery, but we haven't been free from oppression. And I just want to read something real quick to you. Of course it would go out on me. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I think we have found that African Americans oftentimes feel like we don't have those privileges as other Americans in this country. And we are experiencing a movement right now across this country because people are saying enough is enough. We have protests in the streets. We have riots. We have so much going on right now. And I think this is quite timely. I want to thank the president for putting this resolution forth, because this is part of a movement. It's part of a movement, part of a healing process. I'm excited that I can read companies like MasterCard, Lyft, Postmates, Quicken Loans, Square, Uber, retailers like Best Buy, Target, JCPenney, states like Virginia, New York, Texas, are all celebrating Juneteenth, as a holiday. That is exciting. It, again, is part of the healing process. African Americans in this country, we have built this country as well. And we truly enjoy the inalienable rights that every American is entitled to. And it's with great happiness. St. Louis County has come on board. I'm excited about this, and it is quite timely. I understand that we may not be able to do it this year to pay all our city employees, but certainly next year, this needs to be part of a paid holiday. And so with that, Mr. President, I will take any questions or comments on the resolution number 20.
All right, any further discussion? Alderman from the 9th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to echo the colleague from the 25th and ask that resolution 20 be placed in bank.
All right, it's been moved by the Alderman from the 9th, seconded by the Alderman from the 6th, the
Second in bank.
25th, 10th. Any further discussion?
We in bank the second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Madam Clerk, please make note of that. Amend this resolution to add each and every alderman's name to it in bank. Any further discussion? Alderwoman for the first.
I think you're missing Alderwoman Hubbard. She's had her hand up for a bit.
I don't see her.
But she's doing it by this. She's not, she's holding it up.
Hello?
I don't see her on my
Hello?
screen. All the one from the first proceed. Go ahead, proceed, and then all the one from the fifth set should be second. All the one from the first.
They keep muting my mic. Okay. If the alderman from the 22nd would yield, please.
Alderman from the 22nd will yield the question to the Alderman from the first.
Yes.
Alderman from the first, please proceed.
Alderman, do you anticipate that this holiday would be celebrated on the 19th, or would we do as we do with federal holidays and move it to a Monday?
It would be my guess that it would be a Monday, but I'm not in charge of that. That's something that personnel will probably have to work out, because it does have to pass Civil Service Commission.
Well, you are right now, because you're writing the legislation. So since you're one of the primary sponsors, then if your wishes are taken into account. So that's why I'm bringing it up, because some holidays are not moved. Okay, so that's why I wanted to bring it up to say, do you want it to be celebrated on the 19th?
I think it should be celebrated on the 19th. I
do too. So that's why I'm asking you that. So I wanted to make that a record. So when it goes by in the future, people say, well, we don't know what they really meant with that. I just wanted that to be clear. Secondly, I see where you said to be presented to honorees. Are you intending to present this resolution to people, or was that just something that was a mistake that was added?
It was probably some standard language that was added.
Okay. All right, because I would suggest that there are some people maybe in all of our communities who might like to get this as a commemorative resolution. So I wanted you to keep the language, because I think it's good language. And if you have people in your community, especially some of our seniors who maybe never thought they would see this day, that this would be a good thing to have as a commemorative memorabilia to present to them.
Actually, I think
I have no further.
Yeah, I think
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think that's a very good idea, because there are organizations that's mentioned in the resolution that's been working tirelessly on celebrating this event every year. And I think them having a copy of this resolution will be a good idea.
Nope.
All right, thank you. All the one from the fifth. All right, thank you all. All the one for the fifth.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. I just wanted to comment on it because I don't know how everybody else is feeling right now, but this makes me extremely proud because we go through so much as a community and as a people. And, you know, I've had to have conversations with my 16-year-old son about everything that's going on in the world. And then I have certain friends who never really understood the importance of Juneteenth, but I just am proud and honored that as a body, despite all of our differences, we all can understand the importance of this. And I feel that this is a step of how we heal, you know, because life is crazy right now. The world is crazy right now, but it makes me proud. And I woke up this morning feeling proud to know that, you know, we're making some steps. So I just wanted to thank everybody for supporting. I want to thank you, Mr. President, for your leadership and all of the co-sponsors. And I don't know, maybe I'm just in a good space right now, but I'm hopeful about what's coming in the future. And that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alderwoman. Alderwoman from the 20th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I too want to thank the Black Caucus and the leadership on this. And just want to quickly offer a friendly amendment just to fix a typo in the title. There's an I missing in the establishing.
Scrivener's error.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, thank you all. Alderman from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I just had to have a moment to thank you and all those who have had consideration for where we are and knowing that we need to have this recognition. As a senior member of the board, and most especially being a senior member in age, and I didn't even experience what the slaves experienced. But I'm gonna tell you, you just don't know what we have had to go through just to be, no matter how excellent you are, no matter how respectful you are, no matter how hard you work, and you still didn't get fairness. So this really makes me happy. And I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Thank you so much. Any further questions? Alderman from the 3rd.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I also would to appreciate everybody for, number one, agreeing that this is an important day for us. 100 years ago, no way that everybody sitting in these seats, number one, it wouldn't be Black people here, but the individuals that would be holding these seats would agree with this is something that should be done for Black people, or it's a liberating thing for America in general. So for us to have this much growth and to have colleagues, even though we are a board that is comprised of not half Black and half white, it is a primarily white board. We have to have those members that agree with what it is we think this cause means to us. And, you know, in this day and age, to have support in that means, you know, a hell of a lot. So I do want to say, you know, thank you to you all who really may not have a stake in this and understand completely what it means to us, just to give us this day within, you know, this time where you got so much racial tension going on. I think it's important for the city to see that regardless of what racial barriers that we have going on among us within the city of St. Louis, that you see that the board is willing to make some type of bends and movements to ensure that people's voices are heard, at least on a level where we can radiate things and ensure that there are messages being sent out to the communities that people are being listened to. So I just want to, you know, put that out there. I appreciate that. My father's 86 years old. He knows what it feels like to live in this city and have to actually get on the back of the bus and drink at a water fountain that is only for Blacks. And growing up as a young man, hearing stories like that from somebody who is your actual father and everybody around you being, you know, his age also, hearing those type of stories from all of the elders, it can do something to you mentally. And seeing in this day and age where we all are making strides to try to help liberate the Black man within this country, and that's just what it is. And we can say minorities in general. You know, today isn't a day for all minorities, and I want to make sure that that's plain and simple, and I want to keep that 1,000. This is a day for those slaves who were released into this country and were finally set free. And this is a day I think that we should claim, you know, well, not we should claim, that we claim as African Americans within this country. It's a day for us to be liberated and become a part of something greater than just, you know, being enslaved here and being forced to build. So with that being said, once again, I appreciate everybody. Appreciate you, Mr. President. Appreciate all of our colleagues. For every young man and every young woman out there that has no clue what this is, because we don't have real history. You will not hear about this in the history book. I never knew what Juneteenth was growing up in history. They don't talk about it in high school. They definitely don't talk about it in middle school or elementary school. But we need to start making sure we educate our children on how important certain historical landmarks and days are within our culture, so we can cling on to something that gives us something of importance as a collective. So once again, I appreciate it. I appreciate everybody that is willing to put their name on this. I think it's historical for every single white person within the board right now, because 100 years from now, when people's children are playing together and having conversations and they really ask questions like what racism was, hopefully we've eradicated a lot of it up until that point. You all names will be some of those names that are brought up and what changed St. Louis. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 24th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to thank the Black Caucus for putting this together. I'm honored to be a part of it. I'm really proud to be a part of it. W.E.B. Du Bois said, the cost of liberty is less than the price of repression. And I think that that's something that we need to keep in mind moving forward. I think that we should take this energy and this unity that we have here today on this issue, and we should move forward in our future deliberations with it. And thank you again, and I'm honored to be a part of this.
Thank you. Alderman from the 18th.
First of all, let me thank my white colleagues for carrying on the tradition of those great whites. And I want to thank those whites who sometimes paid the supreme price to get us to Juneteenth. And so I want to thank you here today because you are following the true tradition of the white community, of the whites who led independent organizations like the Anti-Slavery Society and the Underground Railroad, and gave many resources to Africans as we were considered slaves. And also I want to say that we must reckon, and so I want to thank you, and I want you to always remember slavery couldn't have ended and wouldn't have ended without those courageous whites who did this. And also we need to remember America would not be America without the free labor that Africans gave for more than 400 years to America. And I want to say this is that America owes the African community reparations. Again, thank you to my white colleagues for carrying on the great banner of those whites who, against all odds, who stood with the African community for no reason except for humanity's sake. And they showed a lot of humanity. And when we talk about white people, we need to always remember those whites who paid the supreme price or gave any material support to get us where we are. So under no circumstances should we ever say, slander white people and say they have not, that they are racist, because most white people with the right are not racist. So thank you again for your support.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 2nd.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I just want to, I'm a little emotional because as I look back now, I am a fourth generation on my mom's side, free Black American, and on my dad's side, only 3 generations free. I had the pleasure of knowing my great-grandmother, who talked about growing up and the lessons she learned from her parents who were slaves. She died at right before she turned 101 years old. I teach my son those lessons that she has taught, and it is very hard now to look and see some of the battles that they were fighting, we are still fighting today. And my son, he's 11, he still doesn't really understand why. You know, he's like, well, Mom, if great grandma was, 100 and they were battling it then, why is it still the same today? And that is very sad because I don't have the answers for him at this point. But I do see that we are moving towards good progress. We have more people who are on board with ending racism than we do, I honestly believe, who are racist. I am proud today that the board has stood up and together. It is a great feeling. It is a great moment. And I just thank everyone. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Very well put. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? I also just want to thank each and every one of you. I've always been proud to be a member of this board. I'm even more proud to be a member of this board today. People say that we can never come together for things. This shows that we can come together for things, and recognize that there are differences in life's experiences, differences in upbringing, and differences in income, differences in taste, and differences in family structures, family situations. But all of those differences, if we reach outside of our differences and seek to understand that everyone has some value to bring in these discussions that we engage in every Friday at 10 o'clock, I think that it only strengthens us as a board. And I'm just so thankful that we have a board that is willing to reach past those things at times. And I'm also thankful that we have very passionate members at this board that express those things, and sometimes in very raw form, but real form, right? And sometimes it has to be raw and real for people to truly understand it. So I want to thank each and every one of you for what you do here. And we heard some of those discussions a little bit earlier on the board bill. And I think those discussions help us get to a better place, and it helps us to grow each and every day when we engage in them. Alderman from the 22nd, you recognize the close.
Thank you, Mr. President. I certainly want to thank you for your leadership on sponsoring the resolution. It's certainly an honor for all of us, every member of the Board of Aldermen, to be co-sponsors of this resolution. But I also want to thank our clerk for giving us a great educational experience this morning as far as the history of Juneteenth. So with that, I would move that we adopt resolution number 20, floor substitute.
Been moved by the Alderman from 22nd. Seconded by the Alderman from 10th. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Resolution 21, sponsored by Alderwoman Tyus, Accountability Actions Plan for Police Officers in the City of St. Louis.
Alderman from the first, you recognize on the first reading of resolution number 21.
Mr. President, members of the board, first of all, the Alderman from the 18th had asked that his name be added to the resolution.
Madam Clerk, please make note of that. Add the Alderman from the 18th's name to resolution 21.
Also, I request that you read the resolution.
Madam Clerk, please read resolution 21.
Resolution 21, Accountability Actions Plan for Police Officers in the City of St. Louis. Whereas the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department and its police officers are called to protect and serve the City of St. Louis community. And whereas the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department is a division of St. Louis City and its police officers or civil servants required to abide by the rules of the civil service, and whereas the sponsor of this resolution and many others in the city of St. Louis recognize and honor the men and women who are called to be police persons and the risk they have on behalf of our residents. Risk they take on behalf of our residents, and whereas there has been consistent proof through documented data that there are historic and persistent disparities in how American communities and persons of color are policed, and whereas the United States Department of Justice Ferguson report was issued in 2014, and the City of St. Louis issued its Equity Indicators Baseline Report in 2019, both of which quantify disparities in our region and include recommendations for action. And whereas a national movement, which includes the City of St. Louis, is building to bring action on police accountability, eliminate disparities in how communities and persons of color are policed, and ensure that our society lives up to its principle that all men and women are treated equal under the law. And whereas by reason of the foregoing, the Board of Aldermen hereby calls for the following police accountability action plan in the City of St. Louis. Elimination of use of excessive force, including deadly force against persons who are unarmed or otherwise possess inferior force. Development of an officer conduct accountability register, identifying police officers who have engaged in misconduct that calls into question their ability to serve as impartial enforcers of the law. Promote a zero tolerance accountability action plan for the police brutality towards unarmed members of the community, equivalent to ending quantified immunity for police so as to provide equal justice under the law. Promote financial responsibility on the part of the police officers that are not found criminally liable for misconduct and excessive force beyond their scope of duty, but are found civilly liable for said conduct. Now, therefore, let it be resolved by the Board of Aldermen of the City of St. Louis that we adopt the above accountability action plan for police officers in the City of St. Louis, and hereby supports the execution of an ordinance and a mayor's executive order, including but not limited to the same accountability action, introduced on the 19th day of June, 2020, by the Honorable Sharon Tyus, Alderwoman First Ward, the Honorable Jesse Todd, Alderman of the 18th Ward, adopted this 19th day of June as attested. Terry Kennedy, Clerk. Louis Reed, President, Board of Aldermen.
Please proceed, Alderwoman from first.
Mr. President, members of the board, I request that I want to have conversation about this resolution. I request that it be sent to public safety. I believe it's the appropriate committee.
All right, it's been moved by the Alderwoman from the first that we send resolution 21 to public safety. Second. Seconded by the Alderwoman from the 14th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Motion carries. Madam Clerk, please assign resolution number 21 to public safety.
Mr. Clerk, the 8th Ward Alderwoman asked if she could add her name to it, the resolution also.
All right, and anyone else, please just notify the clerk with an email later today.
Resolution.
Madam Clerk.
Resolution 22, sponsored by Alderman Coder, matters pertaining to the city treasurer contracting.
Alderman from the 7th, you recognize on this first reading resolution number 22.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I would just move to have resolution 22 referred to the Streets Committee.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 7th that we assign resolution 22 to Streets Committee. And second by the Alderman from the 10th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
That is accepted.
All right, we would dispense with line item 22. Miscellaneous unfinished business.
We have none.
Announcements.
All of the meetings will be held via webinar. Monday, June 22nd, Ways and Means will have a meeting at 10 a.m. Public Safety will have a meeting at 1 p.m. Tuesday, June 23rd, Neighborhood Development will have a meeting at 9 a.m. The full board meeting will have a meeting at 11 a.m. Wednesday, June 24th, HUD will have a committee hearing at 9 a.m. Rules will have a meeting at 10 a.m. Thursday, June 25th, Transportation and Commerce will have a meeting at 10 a.m. And Friday, June 26th, full board meeting at 10 a.m. Those are the announcements.
Any further announcements? Alderman from the 23rd.
Yes. Just two things really. One, the public safety meeting, that's going to be a public forum to listen to public input on, I believe it's Board Bill 63. It's 63 or 65, Mr. President. Which one is that?
63.
63. It's going to be public input with a plan to vote. And anyone that wants to come in afterwards, we're going to listen and talk as we get ready to vote. I think it falls in line with what the Alderwoman from the first had in mind. It lays out kind of in a board bill what we feel we should do or shouldn't do, or what our responsibility. I also wanted to thank everyone that voted with me today on the residency. It's an extremely hard vote for some of us. And I can tell you right now, my commitment to work equally hard on the ward reduction, I think, will be there. My name is on a bill sponsoring that.
Okay.
But I do want to thank everyone for their vote today.
All right. Thank you, Alderman. Alderman from the 9th. We can't hear you, Alderman. You have to unmute yourself. All right, there you go.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just want to make the announcement again that we are having a Juneteenth celebration at the corner of Cherokee and Nebraska today from 2 to 7 p.m. So please stop by and join us for celebrating Juneteenth on Cherokee. Thank you.
Alderman from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Just wanted to mention that if you live on or near Compton Avenue, the 6th Ward will be celebrating Juneteenth and standing in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement at 5:30 p.m. So anywhere along Compton Avenue, we're doing it in the 6th Ward, but obviously it's open for everyone to participate.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 8th.
Thank you, Mr. President, colleagues. Just wanted to acknowledge and thank the Black Caucus for their work in celebrating Juneteenth as well. Thank you, and for telling your stories today. I think.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 2nd.
I'm sorry.
Oh, you
sorry
cut
about
out.
that.
Sorry, you
My
cut
microphone's
out.
having a bit of an issue.
Yeah.
Just to say that those of us who weren't raised with the legacy of having family members who were slaves, to realize just how recent that history was. And so thank you for sharing your stories with us, colleagues. It's really powerful. Just a quick announcement that there is an Action St. Louis march with a bunch of other organizations starting at 1 p.m. at the old courthouse. And that includes support for Black trans lives as well. And I want to wish a happy Father's Day to you who are fathers. Words for me and for my father. And social distance as we are still in the middle of a pandemic.
All right, we're losing. Alderwoman from the 2nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to say happy Father's Day to all the fathers in the 2nd Ward, and happy Father's Day to my dad, the best dad in the entire world.
He is
my
a
little
cool dad.
my little father, my little brother, who is the best little brother, and my fiance, who is the best dad. So happy Father's Day to all the fathers.
All right, happy Father's Day, everyone. I think the Alderman from the 21st.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to make sure that everyone knows about the Freedom Ride March and parade that you are hosting along with Radio 1 in the Black Caucus. That is today at 1 o'clock at the corner of Union and Natural Bridge in the Snooks Plaza is where we'll begin, and that's at 1 o'clock. So I hope everyone can come out. And thank you, Mr. President, for leading this this celebration.
All right, thank you, Alderman. Thank you for all your hard work too, for helping getting things going. I really, really, really appreciate all the work that you're doing. Alderman from the 22nd.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, I'd like to announce a streets, traffic, and refuse meeting for Monday at 9 a.m.
Madam Clerk, make note of that, streets, traffic, and refuse, Monday at 9 a.m. Is it noted?
Don't note it.
All right.
Mr. President.
Alderwoman from the 28th. Oh, hold on for a second. Alderwoman from the 6th. Alderwoman from the 28th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also want to announce a Juneteenth celebration. A racial injustice solidarity march is happening today at 4 p.m. at the corner of Delmar and Hamilton, and will be taking place on Delmar. So I apologize if my colleague from the 26th already mentioned this, but I think it's a great opportunity for us to get out onto Delmar. So hope to see some of you out there today. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderwoman from the 1st.
Mr. President, members of the board, first of all, I also want to wish all the fathers a happy Father's Day, not just in the First Ward, but all over. But I especially want to wish all the Black men who have sustained this violence upon their presence, whether you are a father or not, happy Father's Day, because I know how hard it is to deal. I have brothers that are Black men. I have uncles that are Black men. I have a husband that is a Black man, cousins. I have biracial cousins, half Hispanic and Black, half Asian and Black, but always Black at the beginning of it. And this uncalled for assault and murder upon Black men, just one after another, and especially with all the uprising with Mr. Floyd, to then see what happened in Atlanta. Black women, this is something in the Black culture people don't talk about often, but it's known many times. Black women in culture, Black culture, have had to protect Black men, literally, with their own bodies, to try to protect them from getting whoopings, from all kind of things, attacked, falsely accused. So I just want to say that we have your back. We know it's hard. The talks that you talk about that we have with our son, you have to have it now with your husband, your everybody, and remind them that although it should be safe out here, it isn't. So please be safe on this Father's Day weekend. And I hope I do not hear about another Black man murdered by the police. So happy Father's Day.
Thank you. Alderman from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm hoping maybe the Alderman from the 22nd would be willing to move the streets hearing to a different time on Monday so we can make sure that we are adhering to the sunshine law.
Yes, he'll get with the clerk on that. So just get with the clerk on your actual time frame for your meeting on Monday. Any further announcements? Alderman from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I too want to say a blessed, happy Father's Day, because it's not easy. It's not easy to be a parent or a loved one in these days and times, because you got to pray and pray. And sometimes that's not enough, because it's turmoil that shouldn't be there. And when I hear Number 45 say, he made Juneteenth popular, I am done. I am done. So move forward. Please, everybody, enjoy the celebrations around the city and be kind to everybody. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 22nd, you may be the majority floor leader, but Your mother gonna grab you by the back of your jacket if you wave her out of the camera again.
I wasn't supposed to see that.
We're hoping that she does it while you're on camera before you make this next motion. Alderman for the 22nd, you recognize on the motion to excuse.
Mr. President, all members are present.
All right, you recognize on the motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn till next week, June 26, 10 a.m.
Second.
It's moved by the Alderman from the 22nd, seconded by the Alderman from the 10th and the 14th. 23rd.
At 11 a.m.
The 23rd.
Yes.
23rd
Right,
at 11 a.m.
right, right.
Oh,
Yeah, 23rd at 11 a.m. It's been moved by the Alderman from the 22nd, seconded by the Alderman from the 10th. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. You guys have a great Juneteenth.
You too. Happy Father's Day.
All right, see you guys next week.